Welcome back, beautiful gemsters. Here we are to another segment on Gems Podcast. I am the founder and host, Miss Genesis Amaris Kemp, and with me today is the amazing, talented James W.A. And you'll find out more as I let you know a little bit more about him in his bio. So, James W.A. was born, raised, and lives in Tampa Bay, Florida. After graduating from the University of South Florida, St. Petersburg's Honors College, he published his first book, In the Library, in 2015. Since then, he has honed his ever evolving contemporary style both creatively and as a professional content writer. While moving away from the dark subjects of younger days, James W.A. seeks to use his experiences, joys, sorrows, and wonders he sees in the world around him to lead others to truth and beauty and share meaningful stories to last the ages. So if that doesn't get you thinking, you're like, what else does James W.A. have up his sleeve? I'm going to let him tell you. So welcome, James.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
This is going to be an exciting conversation because your bio is a bit mysterious, and I'm definitely going to be learning along with the gemsters. So let's start with an icebreaker. I'm going to give you two options to choose from. We could either do a rapid fire 10-question game or a true icebreaker, which is like one question. What are you in the mood for?
Ooh, you know what? I'll take the rapid fire. I'm feeling lucky.
So here we go, y'all. We're playing rapid fire with James and Genesis. Do 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 do. Question numero uno. What is one thing that no one knows about you?
Ooh. One thing no one knows about me. Oh man, that's a good question. I feel like a very few people know about me.
Sure.
I'm a huge fan of sour beers.
Oh,
It's well known that I like beer well enough, but my favorite styles are definitely the sours, and that's not a lot of people like this. So I guess that's not completely unknown, but mildly lesser known, I guess.
love it. Question two. What made you were born in Tampa, you lived in Tampa, you went to school in St. Peter. What made you stay in Tampa?
I have a lot of friends here,
Okay.
actually. I currently live with a couple of roommates, and we're really close, and it's great having them around. My family lives here, so it's the people. It's definitely not the weather.
Question three. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Superpower. Probably either if we count teleporting or flying, something that gets me places quickly. Would
Okay.
be really cool, I think.
Question four. Do you have any tattoos or anything that you regret putting on your body?
I do. I have a ton of tattoos. Actually, I have a whole sleeve.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But none of which I regret. I'm all very proud of them.
Question five. What's your drink of choice? Coffee, tea, or something else?
Not counting the beer we just talked about, I'm
No.
definitely a coffee drinker. Definitely can't get through the morning without it. I'm one of those people now.
Question six. What's your happy place, James?
Happy place. What do you mean by happy place?
Like a place that you just go and no matter how you're feeling, it just lifts you up.
Okay. There's a church by where I live. That they sort of it's called adoration, but meditation sort of stuff late at night on Friday nights. They do overnight. So when no one's there and it's just a quiet church, no one around, it's very peaceful. So I guess
Okay.
that calmness makes me happy.
Question seven. What got you involved in writing?
I've been writing for a long time. I found so the kind of the short version when I was in middle school. I was going through the school library, and the librarian they recommended a poetry book. And I'm like, I've never really heard of poetry or no poetry. Let me check it out. I read it, or part of it at least, and I really enjoyed it, and then started writing my own, and I guess the rest is history.
Okay. Question eight. What's your favorite color?
Favorite color? Green. No, yellow.
Yeah.
No, no, actually, it's purple.
Okay. So it was green, yellow, and now it's purple, y'all.
No, it's a Monty Python reference there. But they throw him off the bridge because he gets the wrong color. That's the yeah. Okay.
Question nine. What is your favorite food to eat?
Favorite food? I'm actually quite a fan of Indian food. So probably some kind of like a tikka masala. It's kind of like the most boring Indian food, but I like it.
And question 10. It is our pass or play question. And here are the rules. If you pass, our roles are reversed for this question. And this is where you ask me a question. If you play, I ask one last question to wrap up rapid fire. So are you passing or playing?
If I play, I take one more question. I'll play.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Last question. You just won the lottery. Cha-ching,
What?
cha-ching. However, you must donate to three charities of your choice before the proceeds are released to you. What
Hmm.
charities are you donating to?
So three charities. Okay.
Yes.
There's a local charity in Tampa called or in St. Pete called Pinellas Hope. They do homeless ministry in St. Pete. That's definitely number one. I think they're doing some really good work. Number two, um, probably something to put some kind of cancer research. I don't have an exact charity. Oh, Medivivor actually is a great charity. They do stage 4 cancer research in New York. So that's number two. Number three, ooh, probably Catholic charities. I think they do a lot of good stuff around um, around the world, different disaster reliefs and stuff like that.
Amazing. And thank you for playing Rapid Fire. Gemsters, I just wanted you to learn a little bit more about who James is outside of the work that he's doing so you can really connect the dots because what good is hearing what he says if you're not going to go beyond the surface with him? So thank you, James. Now we're going
Of
to dive
course.
in to the main part of the segment, which is the work that you're doing today.
Mm.
And I know some of your niches. One is writing and comedy. So I'm definitely going to combine those two and ask you some questions around writing
Oh,
and
okay.
comedy because I love
Sure.
comedy.
Sure.
So
That's okay.
we know you've been writing for a long time that like you said. So and just going through the library per your recent question got you involved in poetry and got you
Mhm.
diving and then you said, I could write this myself. So was poetry your first pick or did you start in a different genre?
So I think when I was younger, I think I started kind of two simultaneously. I started writing poetry probably a little more like seriously in high school, I think. And I also did some prose writing. So I tried with like short stories and like school projects and things like that. Nothing really too serious. It's a little cringe, but like a lot of people that are fan fiction in high school, that's a lot of people start off that way. But as I kind of grew as a writer and as I started to write more, I found that I just loved poetry a lot more, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I like the short form of it. I like how you can kind of take a really powerful emotion and put it in a more condensed space.
Okay.
And I always had trouble focusing really to get like a novel out or like a longer form story. Either I had a really good beginning with no end, or like a really cool scene with like no context to it, or like a character I didn't know what to do with. But with like in poetry, you can kind of take those concepts, keep it as the concept, and like just make it a little more punchy. And I really like that.
I like
Um,
that. And then with poetry, can you just come up with something on the fly? Like if I tell you, hey, James, can you write a poem about maybe love? Can you just like do like a quick one on the cuff, or do you need to take time to let it marinate?
I definitely like to take time. I probably could come up with something on the fly. It wouldn't be good though, trust me. Sort of my kind of process is if I have an idea, and I'm really bad about sitting down and actually like, oh, I'm gonna write today, which is an awful habit
Mm-hmm.
for a writer. So many writers will tell you like, oh, you need to write X amount of time a day. I'm terrible with that. I really am. It's something I need to work on. But if I have an idea, I usually like to write it down on paper first, get it all out of my head, don't really think too much about it, just kind of get it out there, and then go back over time and edit it and revise. And
Mm-hmm.
I kind of sit with the poem for a long time. So sometimes it takes a while for it to go from the starting on paper to a typed out final piece.
Okay.
But yes, if usually I get a very if someone's like write me something right now, it's like I don't know, I forgot every word, I don't know how to speak, so no.
Do you go to any like spoken word nights or any speak easies or anything like that up in Tampa or
I
St.
do.
Petersburg?
I do not as much as I used to. I used to be a lot more active, but Tampa has a really vibrant poetry scene. It's really amazing stuff going on in the community. And so occasionally I'll go to open mics. There's a ton of like at coffee shops.
Mhm.
Not quite so much like spoken word events. My writing tends to be more meant to be read, kind of,
Okay.
more so than when you think of spoken word. It's just it's a bit of a weakness of mine. I guess it's a different style. I shouldn't call it a weakness.
Yeah.
It is a different style.
But
But I really enjoy open mics, and it helps spread the word a little bit and help support other writers and support other
mhm.
poets and things like that.
The reason why I ask that, James, is because sometimes, like, well, I'm a writer too, so I have like one book that I put out, Chocolate Drop in Corporate
Nice.
America, and then I've done some other collaborations with some other writers, and I do understand like your learning and writing style, where sometimes you don't want to be so sitting down and sedentary because sometimes you get bored and you check out and you're like, oh, this is not working, or you may have those brain
Mhm.
fogs. So whenever you think about like poetry and some of the things that you have done from past to present, what was one of your hardest pieces to write and why?
Ooh, hardest pieces to write. I mean, a lot of the poems in my book. So just kind of give a little bit of a background. The
Yeah.
book Desolation and Epiphany. It's kind of split into two halves. The first half is the really like sad, somber, melancholic type of poetry, and the second half is a more uplifting, inspirational, sometimes comedic ones. So some of those poems in the first half were a little bit tough to write, because they usually came from a place of sadness or a place of anger or a place of unwell. I think there's one in
Mhm.
particular that might have been tough. Honestly, there were some from my first book that were really, really tough to get through, but that's a totally different story. Um, I would say there's one from the second half in this poem called "The Bottle of Dr. Pepper," um,
Ooh, okay.
it's very loosely based off the bottle of Dr. Pepper.
So
It's
let,
sort of about an experience I had and written after the fact. So kind of trying to get into the headspace where I was at the
mhm.
time and look at that story from a better perspective or from a more uplifting perspective. Um, from a technical standpoint, was a little trickier. I think the first drafts were kind of a little sloppier than I wanted them to be.
So let's spend some more time here because Desolation and Epiphany. So why the name?
So yeah, that's a good question. So desolation is obviously, I kind of set it off in the first little bit of the book, explaining like
Yeah.
the two words, kind of. But
Yeah.
desolation really, while there's a lot of words to describe sadness and depression and melancholy, and there's a lot of words, but I settled on desolation because the root meaning of the word means far from God, away from all the things that make you good. It's a void, it's an emptiness. And I feel like that was a strong word. And a lot of the poems in the first half are, in my opinion, obviously, my completely unbiased opinion, more than just, oh, I'm angry, oh, I'm pissed. It's, I'm in a horrible place. I have no idea what I'm doing with my life. I'm devoid of goodness. Obviously, that's hyperbolic, but that's the vibe we're going for.
And
I thought it was the best word to describe that. And epiphany is kind of the opposite.
yeah.
It's an uplifting word, but I didn't want the second half of my book to be just, oh, I'm happy now kind of poems. So it's a lot of resolutions from the first half. So there's some poems in the first half that have a direct correlation in the second
Mhm.
half. And so it's less of just, oh, everything's happy now, and more of a, we've resolved this specific conflict from the first part, or we can look at this scenario from a new perspective now.
Mm,
It's the sort of revelation, um, as it were. And I thought the word epiphany really encapsulated that.
I
It's
like
also
that.
one of my it's also holiday, which is cool. So
And when I heard you describe it, I don't know why I just thought about like the Bible because it's like Genesis to Revelation, the beginning to the end, and
mm,
then you go from like sadness to like happy times. So it's like the trials and tribulations and the challenges that all of us face going through life. Because if someone were to sit here and talk to you and I and tell, oh, I've never had any sad days or blue days or depressed
mm.
days or whatnot, I'll be like, oh, wow, what type of human are you? Um,
Right, right.
because I mean, we all have had, challenges in life, whether some are minor or some are major, but it's those challenges and things that we go through in life that give us the appreciation of the life that we're living. and help us
Mm-hmm.
learn to love the life, but also help others who are in company with us understand more about ourselves as well as
Mm-hmm.
themselves, because we're going through, the journeys of life. And I like to say life is a hell of a ride, and that ride is a
Yeah.
roller coaster called life, because there's always highs and lows and etc. And it's your perspective of whenever you're going through the go through, like how are you getting to the other side. So I really like the fact that you said desolation and epiphany. And if I didn't ask you that question, some of the audience may be left wondering, why would he call this book Desolation and Epiphany? What's the deeper meaning behind it? Because some people, when they look at books, like going through the stores, how many times do they just look at the cover and they never take time to go through the inside, or they just look at the front cover and the cover
Mm-hmm.
either sells them, or they look at the back, read the synopsis and be like, oh, okay, cool. But they never take time to just crack open the book and just randomly
Mm-hmm.
read a page to see if they could really dive in with the author there.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really awesome points there. I love it. You hit the nail on the head exactly. And that is kind of what you were describing about going from learning from the bad times into getting to the better place. That's exactly what I wanted Desolation, the message of Desolation and Epiphany to be. I kind of, so I guess to answer your question about like the deeper meaning, obviously being in it, not a good place for part of my life. I had an experience one day that really changed things for me. Really, what's how do I describe it even? I describe it a little bit in the book. I don't want to give too many spoilers, but yeah, I had a moment where I really kind of saw things in a new way. I would call it something of an epiphany. It was also on the Feast of the Epiphany, talking about like biblical things. So it's sort of, there's a double entendre there a little bit. But it was an experience where really sort of like my eyes were opened and I really saw things in a new way. I learned things about myself. I saw in a new way. I've always struggled with sort of hating myself and kind of being very malicious to myself, and that caused a lot of conflict for me. So resolving some of that really helped.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I so when I got to that place in life, I realized I wanted to go in a different direction as a writer. I wanted to write to speak to the better days, as it were, the happiness, the epiphanies. But I
Yeah.
had so many poems that were from the Desolation era, well, let's call it, that I didn't want to let go to waste for two reasons. One, I don't want to waste good art. To me, if you make something good and worthwhile, it's worth it. Whether it's ugly, or good or bad, or melancholic or sad or happy. If it's good, it's good. But also, I wanted to show the message I wanted to send home with my book is that to get to the good days, to get to the epiphany days, you have to go through bad times. Like you said, if someone says, I never went through anything, it's like you're either lying or you're maybe just superhuman. I don't know. Maybe think of one of your superpowers he asked about.
Yeah.
But so I wanted to show that you have to go through the bad days to get, but also in those good days, there's some things to be learned. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean that the bad times were justified, but it means that like you can learn from that and grow as a person. So it's sort of like the two sides of the same coin, and I kind of frame that in my book around these two kind of characters, quote unquote, of desolation and epiphany. They're not really characters. There's 96 poems in the book, and they all pretty much stand on their own. But
Oh,
there's a framing device of that there's kind of shades in the other, and you can learn from one and the other. You can't really have true meaning without both.
yeah, because you definitely need both of them to just really appreciate the whole encompass of the book, I think. And I'm glad that you highlighted that and went a little bit deeper there, because it allows us to connect a little bit more with you as well as the book. And then I know now that you're on the other side and you're in a better place, is that where comedy came in? Did you use comedy to help you leverage some of the dark days and some of the bad, because you said that you hated yourself a lot. And
Mm-hmm.
I was just wondering, okay, when did you realize that you were valuable and you are loved, and you started to look at your self image and give yourself that self love, that self care? Because there had to be something at the root which was causing you to hate yourself,
Oh,
whether
sure.
it was cultural, whether it was family ties, whether maybe bullying in school, or whatever the case may be. I don't want to make any assumptions, but there had to
Oh,
be
sure.
something that was that saving grace that had you look at yourself in a different lens, to pull out the happiness and the joy for you to say, okay, this is who James W.A. is. I'm not what the world calls me, but I know who I am and what I'm meant to do. Was comedy that for you, or?
Um, Not exactly. It's funny. I wouldn't really describe myself as a comedy writer. That's kind of funny. There's a couple of poems in the book that I would consider like comedic. I don't. I mean, maybe some people find me very funny. I don't know. I wouldn't describe myself necessarily as comedic, but I think that learning to there's lots to unpack in that question. Learning to. So I apologize if I'm going to jump around a little bit. Learning to kind of have a good sense of humor about things, learning to laugh about things, I think is important. And I think that I think a couple things contributed to my self hatred, as it were, as some poems in the book describe it as. One of which is just taking things way too seriously sometimes. That's definitely something I do. I'm definitely the person that tends to be. I've been described as dramatic before, and tend to be a little overthinker. Perhaps is probably the right word for it. So learning to kind of not necessarily laugh it off, but sometimes if you have a good sense of humor about something, it does make things easier to get through. I think that definitely plays a role. And a lot of the more comedic poems in the book are sort of more not quite sarcastic, but a little more punny, kind of tongue in cheek kind of humor, which is just that's just what I like.
Okay,
I
cool.
don't know if that really answers the question super well, but
It answered it a bit because I knew on it said that comedy was one of your niches, but I just wasn't sure like what type of comedy, and I wasn't
oh
sure if that
sure,
was
yeah,
like um the vice that helped you like overcome. Because another thing that I saw was mental health is very important to you, and
yes,
with you just going through your life and us not really knowing your background or your story, did you go through anything within mental health, or why is mental health so important? Because
sure.
oftentimes people think of mental health as, oh, if I say I have something or if I raise my hand, I'm going to be judged or I'm going to be labeled. When
Mm-hmm.
in actuality, mental health is something that should be talked about, and we
Oh
should have
yeah,
more open dialogues about it. Because just because you ask for help is not a sign of weakness. In my
of
opinion, it
course.
is a sign of strength, because it's
Mm-hmm.
showing that, okay, I'm not okay in this moment, but I'm working on becoming okay, and I'm going to use necessary tools and resources. So, from your vantage point, like, what does mental health mean to you, and what does it look like?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's because I you absolutely nailed it on the head. I don't see, asking for help or struggling with mental health issues in general. I don't even want to say mental illness. I've never been diagnosed with any mental illnesses, but everyone has mental health. Everyone has an aspect of mental health in their lives, right? The brain is an organ just like anything else. It's a machine that needs maintenance, just like anything else. So asking for help is definitely not a weakness at all. And I think that's something I also struggled with was I always kind of thought I had to kind of do things on my own and I could figure this out. I think that's where some of the self-hatred came from too, is when I thought I can do everything on my own and I'm going to do it all myself. And then when I come short, I felt like a failure. I felt like I should have been stronger. I should have been better. I should have done better. And I realized that that's kind of, it's not a good way of thinking because you're right. We don't have to go through life alone, and I have some friends in my life that really really helped me through those times and stood by me in those times, and having those friendships, having those networks is huge. But another reason I care a lot about mental health, well, one, I was actually as a psychology major in college, which is funny actually. That's technically what my degree is in, even though I do kind of nothing with it now. um, but I also see that so many problems in the world, I think, could really be solved if we had better mental health awareness and support. I think a lot of issues that become big problems start off small. I think very few people, I think, wake up one day and just kind of implode. I think there's a progression there, and if we were better as a society, I guess, as a people, to support people through the issues they're going through, I think we could prevent a lot of problems the world has. I think we'd all be very much happier for it.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with that sentiment. And it's funny that you're a psychology major for in college, because I took psychology for 2 years until I switched
Oh, okay.
career fields, and I went to oil and gas, and the company I was working for is like, hey, we'll pay for your degree if you change your major to this. And I'm like,
Oh,
oh,
nice.
cool. Okay, I'll do
Sure.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I work in tech support now, so yeah, I'm not doing a lot with that. But
But so it's hilarious. But I definitely think just being being in psychology and just understanding certain facets helped me understand people more and understand why people do what they do. Not in a sense, I'm not saying I'm an expert because
Sure.
I'm definitely not a SME,
Oh,
but
same.
I definitely resonate with you. I think, like, for example, like those who are in corporate America or they're in the E bucket, the employee bucket, I definitely think employers need to recognize mental health more, and they should have a
Of
mental
course.
health day, and that shouldn't be bucket with like a vacation day. It should be its own day on its own. Like, you say, hey man, or hey lady, or however you address that person respectfully, just
Mhm.
I'm just not feeling well today. I want to take a mental health day and, just get myself back in alignment. I think that should be condoned,
Mhm.
because just because you're not all the way there, there may be a day where you just need to rest and recuperate and just
Mhm.
recalibrate yourself, because there's so many things going on in society today, like family dynamics,
Mhm.
work dynamics, societal issues, so wars, all these things that are happening around the world. Then the media, television is telling us the vision they want you to follow. That takes a toll on people. It's just
Mhm.
everywhere. And I was like, man, I'm first generation American. When I went to the Caribbean and visit my family, I was like, this is so nice. Like, you kind of wake up, there's a sea breeze, you
Oh
eat the
yeah,
fruits.
yeah.
I mean, like, it was just so peaceful. And then I came back to the US with my family. I was like, dang, we're back in the hustle and bustle again. The humping and grinding.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like,
we kind of have an unhealthy, I think, fixation with like if you always work hard, you buckle down, nice, nose to the grindstone, like all the time, like that's the only way to live. And like, no, that's not fair because, like you said, I mean, everyone needs those mental health days. I think it's a saying that if you don't, everyone needs breaks. If you don't take them, your body will tell you when you need to, or something like that.
yes.
Um, so so yeah, no, everyone needs those mental health days, and I think that's super important. Um,
So I want to ask another question before we jump into the CTA. So if there's someone listening out there, James, and they're like, James, I really want to write, because I do believe there's a book in everybody, no matter if it's poetry, if it's nonfiction, fiction, or whatever. That we all have these amazing ideas bubbling up in our heads. It's just a matter of getting them out into the world.
yeah,
What would you say to that person that has something they want to share with the world, but they really don't know how to begin writing or where to start?
yeah, I would probably say two things. One, I would say, and it sounds trite, but like just do it. I think the biggest detriment a lot of people have or mindset that they have is that they
Mm-hmm.
can't write because like, oh, I don't know if I'm good enough. Like, I've
Mm-hmm.
struggled with that at times. Like, I've got this idea, but that's not really that great of an idea. Or like, this isn't going to sound the way I want it to. My recommendation is always is if you have a poem or a short story or whatever you had, just write it. Just do the best you can and just throw it out there. You know, try to put yourself aside. We're our own worst critics. A lot of artists are. Um, you can always go back, and then my second advice is to go back afterwards and edit it. Go back afterwards and make it better. There's so many poems that I have written, not always sober, as it were, which was something an old writing mentor told me. Write drunk, edit sober. Actually, so what he said. That's in the book, actually.
Oh, wow.
But there's some truth to just getting it all out there. Doesn't matter if it sounds good. Just whatever you're feeling, whatever you're thinking. Don't tell yourself this feeling is valid
Yeah.
or this is no one's gonna like this, because all feelings are valid to some degree, and if it's your experience, it's your experience. And
Mm-hmm.
if it's not good, maybe it's not good. Maybe that first draft is abysmal. I've had poems that I look at it, I write it out, and I'm like, what was I thinking? This is awful.
Yeah.
But then go back later. Read a lot. People always say that, but like there's truth to it. Really hone your craft
Mm-hmm.
um, after the fact. But like do it in stages. Get it all out there. Don't think about it, and then go back later and make it pretty, as it were. That would be my advice.
I like that. And thank you for sharing that advice for the audience, because I definitely want them to know that anything is possible. And just because you don't feel a certain way doesn't mean that the audience that is going to read it feels the same way, because sometimes we are our biggest critics and we're harder on ourselves than other people are. So sometimes what we put out there may look disgusting to us, but it may be appealing to somebody else
Mm-hmm.
and be like, oh my gosh, that's exactly where I needed what I needed to see, what I needed to read, what I needed to hear, because we never
Mm-hmm.
know where someone else is at in their life, whether it's their season, their walk, because we may be in fall metaphorically, but they're in summer or whatever the case may be. But it's the words that you put down in that book or on those pages uplift someone. They're like, aha, and it gives them that revelational knowledge that they need to begin carrying out their journey further. So just think about that. And now we're going to jump in to the CTA, which is the call to action. After the audience hears this amazing segment, what is your call to action? We know you have the book Desolation and Epiphany, so tell them where they could get the book and how they can connect with you, and give them some
homework. Sorry, I'm trying to get that in the camera so that you all can see that, and I'm having some struggles with that. There we go.
There it goes.
There's a cover there. So if you like this and this incredible artwork on the cover as well, if you want to check out Desolation and Epiphany, I recommend going to my website. It's the James W.A. So that's my name, jameswa.com. It'll probably be in the description, I guess, as well. Check out thejameswa.com. It's got links to check out the description of the book. It's got some preview poems on there. If you're not too sure if you're gonna like my style or not, there's some preview ones on there. And give me a follow on social media as well, on Facebook and Instagram, and those links are on my website as well.
Amazing. And then what is your homework? Because I always like to challenge the guests to do homework once they listen to a segment. So besides going to grab a copy of your book and following you on your socials, what homework do you want them to do? Do you want them to write something? Do you want them? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. Okay, well, I would say if you are a writer, if you are not a big fan of poetry, or maybe if you are, challenge yourself to write a poem. Poem can be whatever you want it to be. It can be free verse, it could be fixed form, it could be happy, sad, whatever. It could be journaling, it could be not. So if you are a writer, if you don't like poetry, you don't have good experience with it, yeah, I guess my challenge is to give it a shot, give it a try. And if you're not a writer, try it anyways, because you might like it. And if you like writing, and you might like reading. And if you like reading, you might like reading my book.
Oh, I love it. And thank you so much, James W.A, for giving that. And once again, y'all, his website is thejameswa.com. All of his contact information will be in the show notes. So there's no excuse for you not to find him on his socials or not to find his book, Desolation and Epiphany. Everything is listed on his website. So there is a one-stop click, and you click there, and all the info that you need is right there. And since I'm a bit nosy or inquisitive, as I like to say, do you ever tell people what WA stands for?
Actually, most people who know me probably do know it, actually. So it's to give you the short version, it's actually my last two initials. Is the actual true answer.
Okay.
A lot of my favorite poets will use their first two initials. You probably know, like E.E. Cummings, B.P. Nichols, T.S. Eliot, right? They use like their first two initials. So when I was getting started, I wanted to kind of just be cheeky and just do the opposite and go, well, I'm going to use my first name and my last two initials. So I just went with that instead. But those are actually my last two initials. So
okay. Cool. And there you have it, folks. You just heard James W.A. from the Tampa Bay, Florida area. And he hangs out in St. Petersburg. So go check him out. If you see him in the streets of Tampa, wave. Don't act like you're a stranger. He's very friendly. He doesn't bite. And I am Miss Genesis Amaris Kemp. My big ask is to make sure you leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening, and follow the show. We're available on 40 plus audio platforms, and this video will be housed on YouTube. And all you need to do is go to GEMS, GEMS, with Genesis, GENESIS, Amaris, AMARIS, Kemp, KEMP, and all of the info will be in the show notes as well. So just look out for James and myself. Give us some love. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, because that helps us as creatives become better. And feedback is a gift. I hope you have yourself an amazing day. And remember, you are an asset, not a liability. You matter. You were created for a purpose, on purpose. And don't ever let somebody tell you who you aren't and who you are. Know who you are and be true to yourself. Give yourself a big love by giving yourself a big hug, and feel the warmth and energy that radiates through your body because there's no one better than you. I hope you have an amazing day.